So I get a lot of questions from you guys about ISA transfers. So hopefully I'm going to answer a lot of those for you now. Now, first of all, what is an ISA transfer? How is it different to just moving your money from one savings account to another? Well, in a non-ISA account, if you were to move money across, it's all pretty simple, right? You've got money in one savings account and then you spot a better rate over there. So you withdraw that cash, probably to your linked current account, and then pay it into that new savings account. Or maybe you can do a direct transfer across, or maybe you think, I don't want that old savings account anymore. I'm going to close it down and all that money comes back to me. And then, you can put it wherever else you want it to be. Really nice and simple, right? If you were to do that with an ISA, then there is a risk that you will be using up accidentally some of your ISA allowance. Now, I've covered this a lot recently. Your ISA allowance for new money that is being added every single year is £20,000. That is the most you can add into an ISA in a financial year. Now, if you take money out of an existing ISA to put it into a new ISA, that money will be using up some of the allowance. So let's say this year you've put £5,000 into an ISA and you want to withdraw that and pay it into a different ISA. It's the same £5,000, right? That's all you've got in your ISA is £5,000, but you would have used £10,000 of your allowance for that year. Now you might be thinking, well, that's fine because I'm never going to save 20 grand in a year. It doesn't matter if I do that. Even if I do it, same 5 grand 4 times, I'd still be within that allowance. Potentially. But you've got to remember you're doing this. You might have more money. And you've got to remember if you're doing this year after year, then that money is also going to be growing. And you've got to remember you're going to be getting interest or investment gains, whatever it might be, on that money. And as that does start creeping up, if you go over £20,000 and you withdraw all of that money to put it into a different account, and this is assuming you haven't already added any more money in that year already, well, you're not going to be able to put it back in. Let's say you've got 40 grand. You take 40 grand out. You could put 20k in. You have to wait until the next financial year to put another 20k in. And that will use up all of that allowance as well. So you have to wait another year to add any new money. I know we're talking about large sums of cash here, but again, it just demonstrates that there is this risk of just doing a normal withdrawal and deposit with ISAs will end up risking your allowance and potentially meaning if you take more out that you can put back in, that you will be then paying tax on those interests and those gains. Again, I know there are other tax-free allowances that might cover some, if not all of that, but it basically makes sense that if you're going to move money from one ISA to another, that you follow the ISA transfer process. It's literally called ISA transfer. When you're looking for new ISAs for a transfer, this is what you want to look at. Do they allow this? Do they offer the ability to transfer an ISA into the one that you want to apply for? You might be thinking, well, why bother with all this? Why can't I just got it in an ISA? Why can't I just leave it there? As you say, the returns are going to be tax-free, so it's just doing its job in the background. But yeah, remember, rates will change. There's a good chance that when you first open that ISA, it may well have been one of the top paying ones now, but is it right now? Probably not. Head to becleverwithyourcash.com/savings to find all the best rates. Myself and the team, we update this every single day with the best savings rates. Particularly if you had a fixed rate account and that's matured, that will probably then be moved to an easy access one, probably paying a very, very, very low rate. Again, you can transfer it across to another one for a better rate. Or investments, you may well have been investing for a while with this particular ISA provider, but a new one's launched which has lower annual fees. Or perhaps there are different funds and assets that you're keen to invest in, but they're not available on the platform you've currently got and you want to move, again, your money across, again, transferring it over. All good reasons to be doing this. And you also need to remember as well that if you have been using ISAs for a long time with the same provider, that's Financial Services Compensation Scheme protection of £85,000, that still applies. So if you have more than 85k with a single financial institution, you might want to transfer some of that money into a different ISA, again, to make sure your money is there and protected by the financial institutions as a whole, by the financial industry, if something was to go wrong, if your bank was to go under. So really important reasons to be thinking about doing this. Now, how do you go about doing it? Well, once you have found that new ISA that you're keen to go for, you need to look for the transfer process. Now, some of them will do this online. You can log onto your online portal and there will be, when I've done it in the past, nice little simple drop down, select your old provider, you got the account details you need to put in, the sort code, if you've got it, you need to put in how much you want to put across. You probably will need personal information such as your national insurance number, address and stuff, although if you already filled that in on the form, that might be pre-populated for you. And then the new bank will do it all for you. They will move all the money across. Sometimes the provider might not be listed in that form, in which case you will have to print out or go to a branch to get it, or they might not have a digital version at all. You might still need to do that, actually a physical paper one, and either again drop it off in branch or post it off. I've had to do that in the past, which has been frustrating. But again, if you're using moving from a big provider, then there's a good chance it's already going to be listed. But some of those smaller ones might be missing on there. Doesn't mean you can't do it, just means that process can be a little bit more manual. Now, this isn't instantaneous. If you are transferring cash ISA to cash ISA, the transfer should take no longer than 15 working days. So it's potentially 3 weeks you could be waiting for that money to move across. Any other kind of ISA transfer, that could be taken 30 calendar days to do it, so a whole month. Now, that is what it should do. It could take longer than this, obviously. Something can go wrong or they could be a bit slow, in which case you should be complaining to the ISA, the new ISA provider, and potentially I would be asking for some kind of compensation for that while it's happening. But you do all that and it's done for you, and the money will be retaining that tax-free status. So let's now talk about some of those big ISA transfer questions that you have sent me. First of all, do all ISAs allow transfers in? The answer is sadly no, they don't all do that. So you will be having to check that information in the terms and conditions when you are researching those different ISA providers. It's also worth looking for whether they allow full transfers and partial transfers, because they don't have to do in any of these or either of them. Now, a full transfer is, as the name suggests, you're moving all your money from the old ISA into the new ISA. It all goes across. A partial transfer is where you choose how much you want to go across. Now, before the 6th of April 2024, the rules would be that if you were transferring new money that had to go into an account, all of that cash had to go into the other new ISA, because the rules, again, before the new financial year in 2024, were that you could only pay into one new ISA every single year. That is changing, and you can now, from the 6th of April 2024, you can do a partial transfer of new cash if you wish. So if you had some money over there, you got put 5 grand in, for example, you want to keep 2.5k in that account, you can move 2.5k over to a new ISA, because you're going to be able to pay into more than one of the same type of ISA. Now, older money that's been in for previous years, that's always been fine for a partial or full transfer. Again, that is only as long as the new ISA you've opened will allow this. Now, in terms of limits on transfers, there is no minimum. You can transfer just £1 across. Again, that does depend. Some ISAs might say they have a minimum amount of money you have to pay in, so that might be the minimum. But broadly speaking, as a process, there is no minimum. In terms of maximums, again, the only maximum there's going to be in terms of transferring money across will be whether the particular account itself has its own limit, and that financial services compensation scheme limit of 85k that I suggested before. I would not be moving more than 85k across. I would be splitting that out if you can. Now, another question is, does it cost to transfer an ISA? It will not cost you anything at all for the actual transfer itself, but you do need to keep an eye on potentially any investment ones. They may well have some fees for transferring out or for selling the old funds, depending if you're transferring stuff straight across like for like, or whether you are selling it to cash and then reinvesting it in the new ISA. So watch out for those. There may also be, if you have a fixed rate ISA, if you are moving that before it matures, there will be a penalty in terms of ISA, in terms of interest that you can earn. And how much interest that will depend on the length of the ISA itself. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do this. It could well be if you've got a fix at a very, very low rate for a long time, and you can get another fix now at a much higher rate, that penalty and interest could be 3 months worth of interest, might actually be less than the amount you could get at that new ISA in the same amount of time, and it could cancel itself out. But make sure you do that maths before doing that. In terms of timings for transferring an ISA, you can do it whenever you want. You just got to remember that the new financial year, when it comes along, starts on the April the 6th, runs to April the 5th following year. That is the only ISA kind of timeline you've got in terms of new money. So you've still got that £20,000 you can put in for new money every single year. So if you are transferring money that you've paid in this year, just keep a track of that and remember if you're going to add more money and exactly how much you've moved across those different ISAs. But otherwise, you can do it whenever you want, for as much as you want, at any time in the year. Now, this is a common one. Does an ISA transfer count towards that year's ISA allowance? And this is a nice simple one. No, it doesn't. Only new money, brand new money that's put into an ISA, first time it enters that ISA world, counts towards that £20,000 allowance. Once it's in an ISA, transfer does not count as new cash. And that's why you should be transferring it, I say, rather than withdrawing it and adding it back in. So the next one, can you transfer more than one ISA? And the answer is yes, you can transfer multiple ISAs in the year as long as those new accounts allow transfers in. In fact, you could transfer the same ISA multiple times, again and again and again in a year if you wanted to. There are no restrictions there. You can also transfer between different types of ISAs. So a cash ISA to a cash ISA, pretty simple. Cash ISA to a stocks and shares ISA and vice versa. Again, they can happen as well as long as the new provider allows this. And I said before, they might only allow one particular type or a few different types. If you are transferring investments, there are a couple of ways this could happen. There's an in specie transfer where they literally move the existing shares into another provider, so nothing changes there. Or if you were to sell them to cash, which might make it a faster transfer, then you will be having to buy them back again. But again, that is something which you have to be kind of careful of in terms of those fees that I mentioned before. But again, it might be helping you transfer between different providers so they don't allow an in specie transfer. You can transfer a cash ISA or a stocks and shares ISA into a lifetime ISA, again, as long as they allow that, but you will be limited there by the £4,000 annual cap on lifetime ISAs, which sits within that broader £20,000 normal ISA allowance. It can be harder to transfer other ISAs. So, for example, a lifetime ISA can be transferred to a lifetime ISA, but it can't be partial. It can only be the whole thing. Junior ISAs, again, you can transfer them to another junior ISA, but it must be the whole thing. Innovative finance ISAs, you can potentially transfer these, but it's slightly harder simply because the type of money where it's held. Again, it's harder to move those around, but it can be done. Finally, it's worth just talking about the rules before they change on the 6th of April 2024 when it comes to transferring money you've already paid in this financial year. Just worth just going over this if you are catching this at the end of the year. So the rules generally for paying money into an ISA, remember, are you can only pay into one of each type of ISA in that year in terms of new money. Older money is fine, but new money between April the 6th and April the 5th is just one of them. Now that obviously changes next year and you can pay into multiple sorts, but this year that is still the case. Now, if you are transferring money from one ISA to another, let's start off, what if it's older money? Does opening up a new ISA just to transfer money from previous years into it count as a new ISA? Does it count towards your allowance? No, it doesn't. It's just about new money you add. That's the only difference. So you can open up, if you want to, a number of different ISAs this year and transfer money in. And as long as no new money goes in that hasn't been put into an ISA in this financial year, that is absolutely fine. Does not affect your allowance, does not break the rules at all. Now, if you are transferring money that has already been paid in during the financial year, again, this is before the 6th of April 2024, then you will have to have transferred all of the money that's paid in that year over to the new ISA, and then you can only pay new money into that new ISA you've opened. You cannot still add money to that older ISA that you transferred from. Again, that ends 5th of April 2024. The new rules covered mostly in this content today will have you absolutely fine. You can transfer money, new money, old money, doesn't matter. The only thing you really need to remember there is that annual £20,000 cap. It's just on new contributions, whether you have put them in one ISA or another. As long as you've transferred it, it doesn't matter. My name's Andy Webb. This is Be Clever with Your Cash. Thank you so much for watching. Check out these videos here for more on ISAs.